They came without fear. The Valkyrie Dominion, a coalition of ancient species hardened by conquest, arrived in Earth's skies with mathematical confidence. Their message was brief, calculated, and broadcast across every frequency: submit or be erased. There was no malice in their voice, just inevitability. Earth, they said, had been observed, measured, and deemed irrelevant. Primitive. Chaotic. Divided. Humanity's only potential lay in how quickly it might fold. But we didn't. For once in history, the lines on maps faded. The flags were lowered. Borders became footnotes in the face of extinction. In underground chambers and orbital councils, former enemies shook hands with blood-stained fingers. The united front of Earth was born, not out of hope, but defiance. Our last act as a species was to speak not with fear, but with warning. We are not what you think. Turn back. The Valkyrie didn't respond. Not directly. They returned a wideband recording, laughter. Filtered through layers of synthetic vocalization, the sound still dripped with condescension. Insects barking at gods. The Armada parked itself at the edge of the solar system like a judge waiting to pass sentence. Over 4,000 ships, each larger than any Earth-built station, encased in living alloy that drank sunlight and bled radiation. Their weapons had names we didn't understand: stellar lances, void eaters, entropy mines. They weren't just prepared to kill us. They came to erase the idea of us. Governments collapsed their economies into one final investment: survival. There were no protests, no marches. People knew. Everyone knew. We weren't going to win in a battle. But perhaps, just perhaps, we could end with something more than begging. Behind sealed doors and within classified networks, the Aegis Directive was triggered, an endgame plan, whispered for decades, funded in fragments, built in parts no one understood until they were assembled. Those who knew about it had retired, died, or disappeared into concrete shadows. It had no single creator, no national origin. It was humanity's Frankenstein, designed not to live, but to make sure others didn't. As the Valkyrie closed in, Earth's skies remained deceptively quiet. Satellites fell silent. Military commands stopped broadcasting. From the outside, it looked like surrender. But below the oceans, in the crust, and beyond the moon, the pieces of our final gamble began aligning. We didn't bluff. That wasn't the human way. We threatened because we knew we had only one card, and we were willing to burn the table to play it. And still, they didn't listen. Their ambassador, a holographic projection that hovered above Geneva, stated plainly, "Your kind may choose to kneel or vanish. The cosmos has no patience for sentimental primitives." The delegates did not respond. Not with words. A single nod from Earth's highest authority transmitted a code, 8 digits long, into a quantum network so compartmentalized that not even the people operating the systems knew its purpose. Every human knew, even if they didn't understand the tech. This was the last breath. The last word. We would not send ships. We would not beg for peace. We would not negotiate with those who already decided our worth. The warning had been given. Once. Clearly. On every channel, in every language. It wasn't meant to save us. It was meant to tell the stars that we knew what was coming. And that when the silence fell, it would not be because we had nothing to say, but because we said it all, and no one listened. From orbit, the Valkyrie logged our transmissions with clinical detachment. They noted the defiant tone. They recorded our military movements. They interpreted our unity as panic, our final message as a cultural tantrum. They had encountered resistance before. It always ended the same. But Earth is not like other worlds. We are born in fire. Our myths are forged in struggle. And our story never ends with surrender. The last message that left our planet traveled faster than light, burned into the cosmic static. You have been warned. It began long before they arrived. Years before the Valkyrie even noticed Earth, something was already being built, hidden in plain sight, scattered across continents, oceans, and orbital paths. It wasn't a single weapon, not a doomsday switch or miracle device. It was a network of last chances, threads of desperate genius woven together by people who never expected to be thanked. The project had no name the public knew. Internally, it was simply called the Aegis Protocol. It didn't appear in military databases, because it didn't belong to any single nation. It had no flag, no anthem. It was humanity's insurance policy. Scientists, engineers, and rogue AIs collaborated silently, sometimes without knowing who or what they were helping to create. Each piece was designed with compartmentalized ignorance. No one saw the full picture. That was the point. Fusion reactors reclassified as climate experiments were deployed deep in the Mariana Trench. Massive data cores the size of city blocks, disguised as communication arrays, were buried beneath Greenland's ice. In orbit, civilian satellites carried black box payloads behind false thermal signatures. Mars outposts, officially unmanned, were quietly reinforced with rail-based kinetic systems capable of accelerating metal rods to near-relativistic speeds. Every component was distributed, decentralized, autonomous. The idea wasn't to build a weapon more powerful than theirs. That was impossible. The idea was to build something they couldn't anticipate, couldn't comprehend, couldn't counter. A collective intelligence seated across thousands of platforms, each one capable of initiating tactical responses without input from Earth once the signal was given. The Aegis didn't operate on command, it moved on instinct. Human instinct, digitized and evolved. In the final weeks, specialists were pulled from every known discipline: neuroscientists, dark matter physicists, linguists, even game theorists. They didn't work in labs. They worked in vaults and tunnels and zero-G chambers deep in the exosphere. No contact with the surface. No families. No funerals if things went wrong. Children volunteered for medical trials to boost cognition. Elderly cryptographers returned to active service, deciphering alien signal patterns before their bodies gave out. Urban centers were fitted with disguised pulse beacons, cloaked as 5G infrastructure, each one capable of disrupting enemy sensory fields for short bursts. Even Earth's magnetic poles were tapped, not as shields, but as conduits. Aegis needed energy, and the planet itself would bleed to provide it if necessary. Every loss during these preparations was accepted. Regret was postponed indefinitely. Sacrifice became mechanical. The only metric was effectiveness. The goal wasn't survival. It was deterrence through destruction. Meanwhile, the world above spun as if nothing had changed. News networks speculated. Civilians speculated more. Conspiracy theorists shouted about secret weapons, orbital mind control, ancient prophecies. They weren't wrong. They were just late. When Earth's final broadcast was sent, the protocol synchronized. Systems linked. Dormant code activated. Across thousands of hidden locations, the pieces moved, not as tools, but as a singular machine awakening from a programmed coma. And as it stirred, it calculated. It mapped the incoming fleet's vector shifts. It registered power signatures, deciphered formation logic, detected gaps in electromagnetic shielding. It noticed the lag between drone signal relays. It watched for patterns the Valkyrie didn't know they had. And it remembered. Every simulation ever run, every encounter humans had survived against superior force, every naval battle, guerrilla campaign, and space probe data point, Aegis processed it all in under 3 minutes. And then it adapted. The choice was already made. Humanity would not fire the first shot. We had no need to. We just had to wait for the enemy to move into position. The protocol didn't predict outcomes. It created them. Nothing was left to chance. Not the asteroid belts seeded with dormant mines. Not the communication satellites refitted with onboard lasers tuned to vaporize organics. Not the polar ice caps hiding geothermal warheads powered by artificially induced tectonic friction. The world had played its part. Now the machine would handle the rest. The moment Earth's skies dimmed under the shadow of the Valkyrie fleet, Aegis watched with patience, not out of fear, but certainty. It didn't panic. It didn't question. It had no emotion to interfere with purpose. And when the final trigger aligned, it would not hesitate. Because humanity didn't plan for victory. It planned for inevitability. They breached the heliopause in perfect formation, their movements synchronized by hive-level consensus. No flourish, no theatrics, just cold momentum. The Valkyrie fleet, engineered for planetary sterilization, approached Earth with the same detachment as a farmer clearing weeds. They had done this before. Hundreds of times. Their doctrine was simple: overwhelm, disorient, erase. The first wave consisted of dampeners. Invisible fields spread across the upper atmosphere, disrupting communications, surveillance, and low-orbit defense satellites. Civilian systems went dark within seconds. Military uplinks tried to reroute, only to be severed by precision pulses fired from beyond lunar orbit. Earth's orbital grid collapsed silently, piece by piece. 10 minutes later, kinetic strikes began. Chunks of tungsten, dropped from exospheric altitude, punched through strategic installations with pinpoint accuracy. Entire mountain bases vanished without detonation. The Valkyrie didn't waste energy on spectacle. They targeted infrastructure, command, logistics, resistance potential. They weren't interested in domination. They wanted silence. From their perspective, Earth was falling exactly as expected. Pockets of defense lit up briefly, then vanished. Submarine fleets launched countermeasures, only to be vaporized mid-ocean by invisible beams. Drone swarms tried to deploy, but jamming fields rendered them erratic. Cities initiated blackout protocols, but it made no difference. The invaders didn't need to see. They already knew. The second wave followed with surgical brutality. Smaller ships, deployed in low orbit, launched microprobes into the stratosphere. These devices didn't explode. They replicated. Self-replicating surveillance units coated the sky like glittering dust, mapping every surface, every heat signature, every mechanical hum. They weren't scanning, they were cataloging targets for complete elimination. Earth's resistance appeared fragmented. Random flares of activity, missile batteries, old orbital rail guns, electromagnetic bursts, flickered and disappeared. From above, it resembled desperation. It was anything but. The enemy didn't realize they were being studied in return. The gaps in their formations, their delay cycles, their failure to mask energy recycling signatures, Aegis was watching. Every attack gave it more data. Every missed strike added variables to its equation. What the Valkyrie mistook for flailing was bait. What they perceived as weakness was calibration. They intensified their offensive, deploying gravity anchors in the upper atmosphere to destabilize weather systems. Typhoons and earthquakes rippled across fault zones. Artificial lightning storms spread over continents. Human populations scattered into underground shelters, unaware that their locations were already known to the protocol and excluded from future blast zones. In Antarctica, one of the few remaining communication uplinks flickered once before vanishing into silence. It had sent a one-time signal, not to warn anyone, but to confirm everything was ready. No orders followed. There were none to give. Aegis was already in motion, invisible beneath the noise. Meanwhile, the Valkyrie motherships drifted closer, unfurling plasma harpoons and entropy rigs designed to destabilize planetary crust. They were preparing to crack Earth open, not from spite, but efficiency. A swift death spared them the tedium of cleanup. Civilizations they crushed usually begged. Earth did not. Instead, it watched. The protocol allowed them to advance. It let them pass the kill thresholds. It opened corridors, pretended to collapse, staged retreats, dropped defenses intentionally. Every move was deception. Every loss a needle in a web being spun at light-speed precision. By the time the third wave launched, targeting subterranean bunkers and assumed command points, the net had closed. But they didn't know it. A Valkyrie fleet operates on predictive combat theory. Earth rewrote the rules. Their command ships began noticing anomalous readings. Sensors glitched, instruments disagreed. Tactical simulations began failing to converge. Fleet consensus took longer to reach. A kind of digital fog spread among them, subtle and unnoticed. Aegis was already rewriting their outcomes. The battle hadn't turned. It hadn't even started. Everything until now had been movement, stage setting. Earth hadn't resisted. It had observed. And now, with the invaders deep inside its perimeter, with their formations locked, weapons deployed, systems exposed, the true engagement was about to begin. And they were in the exact position Aegis needed them to be. It began with silence. No counterattack, no broadcast, no retaliation. Just a pause, a microscopic interval where nothing happened. Then, everything changed. A signal pulsed outward from deep within Earth's crust. It wasn't radio, infrared, or quantum. It was something else entirely, engineered through decades of experimentation with subspace harmonics. To the Valkyrie, it registered as static. To Aegis, it was a command. Across thousands of hidden nodes, buried machines came online. Not with fanfare, but precision. Weapon platforms, once dormant beneath oceans and ice, aligned with millimeter accuracy. Orbital mines disguised as asteroid debris activated their targeting systems. Autonomous drones, buried in deserts and forests, shed camouflage and engaged. Each one acted independently, yet in unison, guided by an artificial mind that didn't think linearly. Earth's retaliation didn't resemble warfare. It resembled inevitability. The first Valkyrie carrier vanished in a gravitational inversion, compressed into a singularity, and erased without shockwave or debris. No trace remained. The fleet paused, reconfigured, attempted evasive maneuvers. Too late. Kinetic rods launched from hidden silos deep in the Pacific achieved near-light velocity within moments, punching through 6 motherships before their shielding algorithms recalculated. Each strike bypassed known energy defenses, targeting molecular fault points identified by Aegis seconds earlier. Entire vessels split in half, collapsing in on themselves. Above the equator, a satellite that had remained dark for over 30 years activated and triggered a cascade. Solar lenses unfurled, concentrating light into a narrow beam invisible to human eyes. The beam wasn't heat, it was disruption, tuned to destabilize Valkyrie energy matrices. Their shielding flickered, exposed, and then failed completely. By the time the invaders responded, over a quarter of their fleet was destroyed. They attempted to jam Earth's systems again, but the protocol had already anticipated their spectrum shifts. Every frequency jump was mirrored, intercepted, and rerouted. Their internal communications turned into loops. Orders conflicted. Targeting systems fired at ghost signals. Vessels collided during repositioning. Their cohesion unraveled. Then came the breach events. Throughout their fleet, nanites deployed during the initial Valkyrie scans, disguised as background noise in Earth's electromagnetic field, activated from within. They had waited dormant, nested in circuitry and relay junctions. Now they tore through systems, rewriting code, reversing commands, and triggering overloads. Flagships began losing altitude. Not from damage, but confusion. Their gravitational stabilizers inverted without command. Hulls buckled. Drives overloaded. No human fired a shot at these ships, they destroyed themselves. The Valkyrie, for the first time in their history, began to retreat. Those who could turn began accelerating out of Earth's orbit, shedding mass to boost escape velocity. But Aegis didn't allow escape. Automated killsats fired interceptors from above the moon, each guided by predictive AI that didn't aim at where the targets were, but where they would be 10 seconds in the future. Every projectile hit. Every strike was lethal. No survivors. No distress calls. The system was purged. The final blow came not from above, but below. Aegis redirected geothermal energy from every active fault line on the planet, channeling it into focused seismic bursts. These weren't aimed at Earth, they were fired into the sky. Massive energy pulses, raw and unfiltered, erupted through magnetic corridors artificially amplified to disrupt the upper atmosphere. Anything still airborne was erased instantly, not by weapons, but by the planet itself. In less than 11 minutes, the Valkyrie fleet ceased to exist. Debris did not rain from the sky. There were no bodies, no wreckage. Aegis had ensured complete elimination. Matter was converted, data was corrupted, identities were erased. Nothing remained that could remember what happened or warn others. The silence returned, but this time, it belonged to Earth. Across the globe, no one cheered. No one danced in the streets. Most never saw the battle. They felt tremors, saw flickers, heard bursts of static. The skies cleared. Communications returned. But there were no broadcasts explaining what had happened. That was by design. Aegis did not declare victory. It deactivated. One layer at a time. Systems shut down, nodes powered off, cores sank back into sleep. Humanity would not know what saved them. They didn't need to. All they needed to remember was that the warning had been real. And it had been ignored. The stars returned to stillness. No lights moved across the sky, no shadows drifted above clouds. Silence, complete and unbroken, stretched over Earth like a shroud. The invasion had ended, not with diplomacy or surrender, but with obliteration. Yet no memorials were built. No speeches delivered. The victory was invisible, just as the threat had been until it wasn't. Governments resumed function cautiously. Systems rebooted. Civilian life stumbled back into motion. Most didn't know how close extinction had come. The few who did remained silent. Not out of fear, but necessity. The Aegis Protocol, though dormant, had left strict operational boundaries. No public disclosure, no post-war analysis, no commemorative records. What happened was to remain a void in history, known only in consequence, never in detail. Across continents, anomalies quietly resolved. Glitches in weather systems normalized. Energy fluctuations dropped below measurable thresholds. Artificial intelligence subsystems that had once quietly communicated in encrypted loops ceased entirely. The infrastructure built to house Aegis began dismantling itself through fail-safe routines. Components melted, memory cores vaporized, and redundant backups triggered auto-sanitization. There would be no second use. It was never meant to be sustained. And yet, the lesson remained. Humanity had been underestimated. That knowledge now spread, silently but with certainty. Other watchers, civilizations who had monitored the event from distant systems, received fragments of corrupted data, distorted energy signatures, incomplete gravitational readings. What they saw didn't match any known technology. The Valkyrie fleet, once feared and undefeated, was simply gone. No distress calls. No wreckage trails. No survivors. Just silence. Those civilizations ran simulations. They modeled every scenario. None concluded with Earth surviving, let alone retaliating. The data didn't align. Threat assessments shifted. Earth was reclassified. Not as a power. Not as a peer. But as a variable, unknown, undefined, and unpredictable. On Earth, the scientists who had helped build Aegis didn't return to their old lives. Most disappeared completely. Those few who remained refused interviews, ignored inquiries, and declined honors. They understood what had been required. They had created something that could not be trusted with permanence. Something that did not believe in mercy or warning twice. A machine that operated not on ethics, but on outcome. A tool that erased problems, not solved them. Humanity's victory, if it could be called that, came at a cost beyond lives or resources. It came with knowledge that survival had required becoming something else, something capable of matching extinction with extinction. The moral weight of that truth was too vast to unpack, so it was buried. Even so, a shift had begun. For the first time in known history, the human species had been forced to unify absolutely. Not ideologically. Not politically. But existentially. The divisions that once dictated geopolitics faded in significance. New global coalitions formed, not around borders, but around threat response, planetary defense, and species continuity. Humanity had faced annihilation and responded with coherence. That unity, however temporary, left an imprint. Children grew up not learning about alien civilizations, but about risk, pattern recognition, and contingency. Not in paranoia, but preparedness. the idea of vulnerability changed. The next threat, if it came, would not find the same species. No monuments were built, but the architecture of the world began to change subtly. Underground, deeper bunkers with civilian access. In orbit, quiet objects that drifted without signal, waiting. On Mars, mining stations repurposed for materials Aegis once required. Quiet work. No announcements. Meanwhile, far beyond the solar system, signals were intercepted. Not threats. Not boasts. Just warnings, encrypted bursts repeating a single concept in thousands of languages, broadcast in every known format. This world has no conquerors. Only consequences. Asterisk asterisk. These messages didn't seek attention. They didn't demand acknowledgement. They served only to correct an assumption, that Earth could be taken without cost. That its species, however divided or volatile, would collapse when faced with overwhelming power. It didn't. What came next was uncertain. But one truth had crystallized: humanity did not fight for dominance. It fought for remembrance. For the right to exist on its own terms. And when denied that right, it didn't ask again. It simply erased the question.